Hello everybody and welcome to our webinar on benefits of integrating your management system. My name is Terry Fisher and I'm skillfully supported by my colleague Richard Walsh.
Good afternoon and welcome. Afternoon Terry, how's things where you are?
All good, thank you Richard. How are you?
Good. Yeah, fine. Rain's held off. It's still sunny here, so nice afternoon.
Very good.
Right, I'll let you do the introductions.
Yes, so from our point of view, we'll run through the slideshow in the normal way, and anyone who's got any questions or whatever as we're going, by all means, fill in the questions via the chat box or the question box, should I say, and we'll attempt to answer them as we go. And we'll also have an opportunity if there's a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So there's plenty of opportunity to ask questions. There are circumstances that we can't answer direct questions about particular organisations, but we can give generic information about system requirements, etc. So we can't consult directly, but we can answer and clarify system requirements as we go and how, as assessors, we interpret the needs and the benefits of integration. So without further ado, we'll move forward.
Move on, yep.
So just to give you a quick overview about NQA, I'm sure most of you will be familiar with NQA's global presence throughout the world. There's some stats there about certification bodies and where we sit in that league table, so to speak. In America, with our colleagues at NTS, we're America's #1 certification body in the aerospace sector. We're in the top 3 in the UK, and we're also China's certification body for the automotive sector. We're also globally #1 for certification in telecommunications, globally #3 for aerospace, and UK #2 for aerospace as well. So just to give you an idea of the coverage of NQA, we're not just a UK-based organisation. We specialise in a range of management systems and provision of certification services, including training. So it covers quality, aerospace, automotive, environment, energy, health and safety, information resilience, food safety, risk management, and medical devices. And the list seems to be ever expanding based on market demand. So that's another positive thing.
I'm sure there'll be a few more to add to that in the not too distant future.
And there we go. We also provide a range of training services in the background to certification, and that can be both in-house training, e-learning, live webinars such as today, virtual learning sessions under the current restrictions, and also national and public coverage for various locations depending on demand. So we can be quite flexible there in terms of if a particular, we get a group of people needing something in, let's say, Newcastle, then we can generally meet that requirement on a flexible basis going forward. There's a quick introduction for myself, and I'll let Richard do his in a second. So from my point of view, I'm NQA's Principal Assessor for Occupational Health and Safety. Haven't been an assessor all my life. I've actually worked primarily in manufacturing and distribution, etc., general manufacturing, including wall covering, etc., as you can see there. So I spent more of my working life sat on your side of the table as clients than I have sat on the assessment side of the table as an assessor. But I think that enables us to have a good appreciation of what happens in the real world and what we need from these systems in reality within organisations to make them meaningful. I'll let Richard introduce himself.
Hello, yeah, hi. I guess some of you have come across me before, sat in on some of my webinars. I tend to do all of the ones around environment and energy and carbon neutrality. I've been at NQA for almost 14 years now. Seems half a lifetime, probably about a quarter of a lifetime, to be honest. Prior to that, I spent 12 years working for Groundwork, which is a large environmental charity working in consultancy. So I've been involved in management system support, particularly for environment and lateral energy as well, since the early 90s. And prior to that, I'm also an engineer, and I'm actually skilled as a metallurgist. That was my background, going right the way back to my engineering days. But now I major in energy and environment, as you can see there. And just reinforce, as Terry's just said, if you have any questions, type them in the question box. Terry and I will pick them up as we're going through. If we feel it's appropriate to answer them at the time, we will do. If it's something we've perhaps moved on from, we might just park the questions to the end. But I'll try and sort of at the moment field any of the questions that are coming through. Terry's driving the presentation. I'll try and manage the questions at the moment. And then as I say, there is a recording of the webinar. If you sat through any NQA webinars before, you'll know that probably early to mid next week, Natalie, who's in our marketing team, she will provide you with a PDF copy of the slides and a link to a recording of this webinar. So there's no need to frantically try and scribble down everything that Terry and I are saying. You can, a bit like being on the BBC iPlayer, you can listen again if you so wish. So I think that's all the housekeeping, Terry. So if you want to move forward, we'll see what the first slide says. There we go.
So, as a quick overview there, what we're trying to do is look at the objectives of and the meaning of integration of the systems, looking at Annex Sl and PAS 99, combination of standards, the benefits and why integrate standards, the benefits of that integration, and how to think about integration, because it does take some thinking about in terms of how you need a strategy of how you're going to align your management systems, and the common and different areas for discussion throughout as we're going through. There's a lot of commonality in the way that standards are structured, and we'll discuss that as we go. So Richard, I'll let you go into the
Okay,
Annex Sl.
Annex Sl. Right, so, oh, be careful. I have one of these Amazon Alexas on my desk, and it just suddenly flashed when I said Annex Sl. I was expecting some input from this blooming device. Annex Sl was published, as you can see there, 2011, so 10 years ago now. And I always describe Annex Sl as an empty standard. There's nothing in it other than a structure. And it provides the structure that the vast majority of our management standards now follow. So whether it's 9001, 14, 50001, 45001, 27, 22001, which is food, they all follow the Annex Sl high-level structure. It replaced a previous guide, which was called Guide 83. But the idea being that it streamlined all these standards. All of the standards now, when they're written, follow a set template. And that probably more than anything has meant that it's become easier now to fully integrate all of these standards. As we'll look a little bit later on, there are an awful lot of areas that are common to every single one of those standards that we've talked about. So they all have a section on management review. They all have a section on internal auditing. They all have a section on context and needs of interested parties. And as you can see there, so that's the clause. So those 10 clauses are common to every organization, every standard rather. And the clauses that we're interested in are clauses 4 to 10. They are what are known as the auditable clauses. Clauses 1, 2, and 3 sort of set the scene. Clause 1 isn't the scope of your organization. Clause 1 is the scope of the standard itself, whatever the standard's trying to achieve. And where possible, the clauses across all of these standards have identical core text. So it doesn't matter whether you're looking at a health and safety standard or an energy standard, the common clauses have a very, very similar wording. They share common terms and they share core definitions. So ISO have done their bit in trying to help us all integrate these standards as best we can. Next slide, please, Terry. A standard that we don't come across very often. I'm not sure whether I've done any work in the past. I don't think I have on PAS 99. Have you, Terry?
No, it's not a commonly applied standard, but it
Yeah.
was there. It's there and has been there for a number of years, obviously.
It's another standard that helps you draw together all of the different standards that you may be certified to, all of the different elements of the system. PAS, for those of you that are not sure, stands for Publicly Available Specification. I always think it's quite a strange title considering you have to pay for them, but it is a publicly available specification. So PAS 99 sort of is a guiding standard. I don't think it's a standard you can be certified to, and it sort of helps you pull together all of these areas. But if I'm honest, I think the fact that all of these standards are now in that set format, I'm not sure whether PAS 99 still has much relevance, which is probably why we don't come across it very often. I've put it in because it was a standard that we had been asked about once upon a time, and it's more for awareness. So if you come across PAS 99, it's there to help you and will guide you through the process of integrating. But I think hopefully this webinar is going to help do that anyway. So you can actually combine any standards together, or any Annex Sl standard can be combined. These are just some of the popular combinations that we come across: 9 and 14, 9 and 45, 14 and 45. I work with quite a number of people who've got 14 and 50,000, environment and energy, and so on. There isn't a limit. You can pull as many of them together as you like, and as Terry said right at the start, we certify in a lot of areas, and these are some of the, I'm tempted to say, more fringe standards that we also work to, but every single one of those also follows the Annex Sl format. So if you've got a 9,000 maybe core standard, and that's probably where most people start, you can then start to bring in any of these other standards. So the number of management system standards has increased. However, it still is just as easy to draw them all together because they all have this Annex Sl format.
Certainly, information security management has become increasingly popular in the last couple of years, and ever increasing in popularity due to the way that organisations use information systems nowadays.
We do get an awful lot of inquiries at the moment about that particular standard, 27001. It's become, as you say, Terry, it's become quite a popular standard. A lot of inquiries from people at the moment asking about it. So why should we integrate? I'm assuming you're all here because you have an interest in integration, but actually, why should we do it? So if you have to ask people who manage businesses, people who manage companies, organizations, whatever they might be, what is it that somebody who's managing a company might want? Well, they want really to be able to utilize the resources as effectively as they can. Most people would certainly welcome less bureaucracy. People want all areas of the organization pulling together, not pulling off in different directions, but pulling together, delivering company-wide objectives, all working to the same end game. People working together to, as I said, to achieve the same end, making things more effective, more efficient. The whole organization working as a team, no delays, backlogs, making sure that the boundaries between different processes, that's quite often where the weaknesses can be, that those boundaries are well defined, and that we understand how we get from one element of a process to another. Clarity in those processes, clear responsibilities across the whole organization, people know what they're doing. The removal of silos, because if you sit there with, say, just a quality system and then somebody else is managing an environmental system and somebody else is managing health and safety, those people tend to work in silos. It helps oversight, management get a clearer picture of what's going on. It identifies and prioritizes improvements, and actually then there is less infighting, there are less barriers between departments because everybody is ultimately pulling in that one direction. And I guess that is really, as far as I'm concerned, sort of a list of why we should be thinking about, or why businesses should be thinking about fully integrating their management systems. So from the other side, and I'll let Terry pick up maybe after this next slide. So I'll looking at it from a staff perspective, we all want less frustration. We clearly want less paperwork. And I'm sure we all want to know what part we have to play and what we do, how that fits into the bigger picture within the business. So what is it that we're doing, and how can our little part of the business sort of integrate with what everybody else is doing, and how we fit into the bigger company picture. We all want to feel part of a team. We want to know what we're responsible for. One of the things I found very frustrating in my career back in industry was in some cases being given the responsibility for something without having the authority. So therefore, if authorities and responsibilities are properly defined across the board, then that helps with certainly less frustration, helps people understand how they make the part, how they play their part. And one of the things that frustrates me the most as an assessor, possibly Terry would comment and say the same, I don't know, is people making the same mistakes over and over again. I've always said, and part of all my assessments, I don't know anybody online that's been assessed by me, I'm quite happy if people make a mistake. The person who never made a mistake never did any work. However, the thing that frustrates me madly, if you like, is finding the same mistakes being made time after time. And that's where you end up raising different levels of findings. I have a client that I audited a couple of weeks ago that ended up with a major non-conformance because they made exactly the same mistakes as they made back in the autumn. And I even put in the executive summary, if I find these issues still around when I next come on site, there will be a major non-conformance. So again, we see this a lot, people making the same mistakes over and over, and it's all about the different facets of a business, learning from maybe what other areas have come across. And when we're now looking at closing out findings, when we're looking at closing out corrective actions and corrections, it's not just closing the initial issue, it's looking to see, are there any other areas within the business, any other areas within the system that can be improved? And a full integration helps with that process. Next slide, please. So I'll finish off this one, which sort of sums up these two. It would appear to me that both managers and staff want the same things. So if that's the case, why do we see in so many organisations a reluctance to support the development and implementation of a fully integrated system? To me, it's common sense. Okay, Terry.
Right. So taking on from Richard's point there, what does integration actually do for the organisation? Integration should enable the organisation to have a clear mission and objectives, and to make those achievable within the organisation. So you want challenging objectives, but they also need to be achievable. It's no good setting objectives that cannot be achieved. That helps demotivate the organisation. Integration should define all the processes and the interfaces of the organisation, so it should bring along everybody within that organisation, because everybody can contribute in their own way. It integrates all activities, objectives and processes into the management system of the organisation. So rather than viewing the management system as a quality management system or an environmental management system or a health and safety management system, it should be looking at this as a business organisation system or an integrated management system that covers the whole of the business. It helps provide clear accountabilities and responsibilities, as we've just talked about. It enables processes and people and the resources to be aligned correctly, because we talked about duplication before. That duplication is going on within a business, then that's a waste of resources, and it's a waste of people's time and effort and cost to the business, which can also be very frustrating. So all these things can help be aligned by the integration process. I'm not saying integration's easy and can be done in a short period of time. It may take a while to understand all these things, but it is important to look at that. It enables processes to be reviewed, people and resources to be aligned. It also enables consistency of product and service to be aligned, so that there's a clear goal as to how that contributes, or how your operation contributes to that provision within the organization. It enables you to weed out controls that are spurious and generates documentation and various things. You can challenge the various things that may be established historically, and you can challenge documentation and things that doesn't appear to add any value or doesn't appear to contribute to the benefit of the organization, or it generates information that then isn't then reviewed and used to the benefit of the organization. So the information itself could be very beneficial, but if it never gets looked at and reviewed and doesn't get used, it's serving no purpose. So one of the things about integration, it enables you to stand back and consider what you've got already and then how you can use that going forward. It also creates a basis for training and development within an organization. It could be that we can develop this process, change it slightly and develop both the process and potentially people within the organization to undertake a more fulfilling, rounded role within that organization. It enables management with a tool to assist in their oversight, to be able to see what's actually going on within the organization and to make sure it's going in the direction that's intended. And it also helps to identify what needs to be improved. So it identifies areas I won't say weakness, but areas for improvement, and areas that actually, if we've got duplication, well, we can consolidate that, and resolving that duplication, for example, is and can be a huge improvement to an organization. It seems, therefore, that developing an integrated management system which would appear to be common sense. But as we've all experienced, the problem with common sense, it isn't too common on occasion.
Just a quick reminder, we've got one question come through already from Stephen Askew. Hi, Stephen. Stephen works for a business that I audited for many, many years, up to probably last year now. Stephen's saying that they've got a 9,000 and 14,001 system in place, which I know very well, and they're looking to add 45,001 in. So want to rewrite our separate systems while adding in 45 to make one single system. I guess it's more of a statement, Stephen, than a question, but I'll try and sort of just flesh that out a little bit. I would argue that what you've got in place with your existing 9 and 14,001 is a very, very firm foundation for adding in 45. And actually, you're only adding in, as we'll see this demonstrated a bit later on, you're only adding in half a system almost. The core bits of 45 are already covered in 9 and 14. So you've got a management review, you just need to tweak the management review to cover the bits that's required. Same with internal auditing. The bits that will change, as we'll see later on, are the bits around operational control, some of the bits around planning, where you've got to start adding in some of the stuff that you're already doing, I guess, things like health and safety risk assessments. So we'll cover that a bit later on, but I think it demonstrates, Stephen, a good point for you and for everybody else, that if you've got a couple of standards already in place and your 9 and 14 system was integrated, actually adding in a third standard isn't a huge, great problem. It should be fairly straightforward because you've already got those foundations in place. Next slide then, Terry. Nope. There we go. If we're setting out on that road, and maybe I can sort of pick up with where I was just talking about the system that Stephen's got, we need to be thinking about to what extent do we wish to integrate? because I think both Terry and I see various degrees of integration with some of the systems. I would obviously push for people to go for a full integration. But at the beginning of our reports, one of the one of the pull-down boxes that we have to tick is the level of integration. Is it full integration? Is it partial integration? Or is there no integration? So that's probably a consideration that you need to think about. What extent are you going to go for this integration? How is the culture of the business? Yes, you may be pulling together different areas of the business. Is it going to be a problem? Is there any cultural aspects within the business? So the health and safety manager's always sat at the end of the corridor and got on with it himself. Is he going to resent, or is she going to resent, being dragged out of that office and made to work with other people? Is that an issue in terms of how people worked in silos? Are they happy working in silos, or is there going to be some resistance to trying to integrate people better? Do we have the right level of competency within our organisation to be able to manage an integrated system? Because it's fine if we've got the new standards don't require you to have managers, but most people still have a quality manager and an environmental manager and a health and safety manager. Do you have somebody who can actually act as a systems manager that will sort of be, not maybe in terms of status a level above, but is going to actually have oversight of the entire system, still allowing the different technical areas to still have control of their bits of the system? How do we pull together all the different legislation? Are we content having a health and safety register and then having another register for energy and another register for environment? Are we happy having a full legislative register and other requirements, including customer requirements if we've got 9001 in place? And also making sure that we set out with a clear set of objectives for our integration project, taking into account all of the bullet points we've seen there. Where do we want to end up? As we do with any journey, if I'm setting off to go somewhere, as I will be on Monday morning, the first thing I'm going to do is to put the destination into my sat nav, so I know where I want to end up, so that I know where I need to be on that journey, making sure that we know what the end result's going to be. All of these standards follow the I have a background in quality initially, so the Deming cycle, for those of you that are quality gurus, plan, do, check, act, and they all follow that exact same process. So establish what needs to be achieved, organize our resources, we implement the processes, we monitor and measure the outputs of those processes, we measure how the processes are performing, and then we act based upon that checking, and maybe then tweak our plans and then keep going round in that circle. Every single one of those standards, both the main standards and the, if you like, the supplementary standards we were talking about, and all the standards have been written, all follow that cycle. So I'll talk through this because this is my analogy, and I'm going back a long time now in the days when I worked in training, and I used to, this is how I used to introduce an integrated management system. That, believe it or not, is a bare Christmas tree. It's a Christmas tree with no decorations on whatsoever. First, next slide, please. So all we're doing, we think about our basic structure. So this is the basic Annex Sl structure, and this is the way most people work. So we start off with adding in the bits of quality. So the Christmas tree bit, if you like, are the bits that are common to every single standard. Context, needs of interested parties, risks and opportunities, training, awareness, competency. As we go through, we start to build in the different bits. So obviously environment has some slightly different bits to quality. So environment's got aspects and impacts. There are some additional bits on legislation. Health and safety, instead of aspects and impacts, you're building in health and safety risk assessments. And finally, Terry, I think the last one should be yellow. Energy. Energy also then requires you to have an energy review. So they all have very, very different specific areas, but those specific areas all come within the same bits. And the idea being that all you're doing is you're adding in the different facets. So if we go back to Stephen Askew and his existing 9 and 14,000 system, he's already got a Christmas tree with the blue and the green baubles on, and all he's doing is adding into the same structure the red baubles that relate to health and safety. And I found in the past that becomes quite a simple way of describing what it is we're trying to achieve with an integrated management system, that we've got the core structure of the system and we're just adding in the different facets of whatever standard we're adding into that integrated system. Next slide, Terry. And that is basically what we're looking at. So you've got the integrated management system, and that's just a more normal view, I guess, of the Christmas tree, but set out as you would perhaps more expect in a business type presentation rather than somebody trying to sell you Christmas decorations. Okay, right, Terry.
So we talked about Annex Sl and we talked about system integration. Now we want to look at, there are some common clauses here that should be familiar. And I think one of the challenges sometimes is for organizations, they understand these clauses, but they may not fully understand them, and bringing them together could be challenging, or they think they're going to lose some effectiveness by bringing these elements together across multidisciplines. And I think that's sometimes one of the challenges of looking at integration, because they don't want to weaken the benefit of having an integrated system. They don't want to lose that focus on, oh, there's key elements of this that we really need to retain, and they don't want to lose that. I think there are some fears about integration, but it's down to that organization to look at those challenges and use these common elements to make the process straightforward for the organization. I think anybody would, sorry. I think anybody who's already looked at context and needs and interested parties, one of the biggest challenges is understanding what that actually means to that organisation. And once you understand that, applying it to environment, applying it to health and safety, applying it to energy, applying it to information security. Yes, there may be different interested parties, but the process of managing those remains quite consistent throughout. Correct. So although it may require additions to, the actual process remains quite static and robust throughout.
Whichever one of the standards you pick up will have every single one of those clauses, and every single one of those words are in every single standard that we come across. So that if you like, is the Christmas tree. Those are the bits that are common, and as Terry's just said, we may need to just tweak a little bit the context, because if we've got context relating to quality and environment, we then need to think about what is our context. If we're adding in health and safety, if we're adding in 45,001, what is that? What do we need to add to our existing paper or procedure or list or whatever it is we've got, however we've documented it, if indeed we have documented it, we need to think about what is it we're going to add in relation to that. Likewise, under leadership, there are some specific health and safety requirements on the leadership clause and in terms of responsibilities, but nevertheless, they are the common areas.
Risks and opportunities again, compliance obligations. Okay, in 45,001, they use the term legal and other requirements. But as far as the standards are concerned, those two terms can be interchangeable. It's about the process that can be applied to compliance obligations and to legal and other requirements. So although the different standards may use little changes in terminology, the process delivery is primarily the same. It's looking at what you need to do, what's a statutory compliance, what's mandatory compliance, and also the areas that of an organisation that it chooses to comply with. So there you get the legal and other requirements.
There's another question I was just going to pick up, Terry, if that's okay.
Come
from David. Having a systems manager to have oversight of the overall integration is a great idea. Thank you. But how does this fit in with the need for the quality safety manager or quality or safety manager to have direct access to director level? How can the system manager have overall control of the integrated system without blocking that direct access? I think that was really the point I was trying to make when I was saying it may not be that the overall system manager might not be maybe a tier above, but there may be a management team that looks at the integration, looks at the management of all of these areas, and there may be somebody, it depends how big the organisation is, you might still have a quality specialist in there, you might have a health and safety specialist and an environmental specialist, but there is also somebody in there that's got the overall oversight of the system as well. So maybe not a specialist in any one of those areas, has a good understanding of those areas, but maybe a team of 3 people actually manages this. So you've still got the direct access. I've seen a number of flowcharts or organograms, if you like, of business structures where that direct access is shown as a dotted line. When I've been a quality manager of a business in the past, and I have been in a couple of businesses, I didn't immediately report to the managing director. I had maybe 1 or 2 people between me and the managing director, but on the organogram, it showed a dotted line from my box right the way through to the managing director to show that irrespective of any other managerial roles or lines of communication, I did have that direct line of access if I so needed it. And that's how I think I would probably expect it to work, David. I don't know whether that answers your question. I'll pick up the final question. Let's have a clear out of the question box at the moment. Maybe you can answer this one, Terry. Is it usual to have an integrated policy statement, or is it best to still have separate quality, environment and health and safety policies? What do you think?
To be quite open and frank with you, it all depends on the individual organisation, because at the end of the day, it's about communicating effectively and making that statement for your organisation, because that policy statement, yep, it can be equally effective integrated and all 3 combined or all 4 combined, whatever. However, some organisations, it doesn't suit their culture. They prefer, and that doesn't detract from really the level of integration. So having the separate policy, the policy is the leading implementation tool that actually the rest of the management system is there to deliver that policy commitment. And it's really important to make sure that that's suitable for the organisation. So I would say it's down to the organisation to choose its own preference, because they know their internal culture and how they operate far better than someone like we do. So it is really down to the organisation. But it talks about leadership commitment, and just referring back to what Richard said a few moments ago about having the roles and responsibilities and direct lines, etc. Integration should be led by the senior management team of the organisation. It needs to come from the top down, because it won't succeed effectively without that commitment of the senior leadership.
All I would say on an fully integrated policy, of course, you need to make sure that that one policy ticks the boxes of the requirements of all the individual standards that are contributing to it. So if you have one policy that covers health, safety, environment and quality, each of those standards has some specific requirements that the policy must make a commitment. So therefore, you would just need to make sure that it had all of those in. And sometimes it can be a bit clunky if you're trying to make a policy do 3 jobs in one go. Some people I've seen will have almost like an overall policy, and then maybe some appendices, one that will cover quality, one that will cover health and safety, one that will cover environment. That's another way of doing it, perhaps. But as Terry said, it's sort of horses for courses, really, whatever suits you best. But just make sure that if you're having one policy, it does cover the requirements of all of the separate policies that are, separate standards that are within that integrated system. Just a reminder, we're normally hoping to last about an hour, so we're still about 20 minutes to go. Any more questions, fire them in, and I'll try and pick them up, or I'll try and bring them in as we go along. So next slide, Terry, please. One of the things that, one of the areas where the biggest differences are across, and these are now the standards where we're going to bring in the different coloured Christmas tree baubles, if you like, are the areas where you're actually doing something. So the clause 8 is, if you like, a doing clause. It's a clause where you have to actually put something in place. You have to control things. There's a degree of planning and controls, and in some of the standards, emergency preparedness. So these are the areas where you need to be having some slightly different things. So what you might do to control something from a health and safety perspective might be totally different to what you might have to control something from a quality perspective. However, one of the things that we have to do as assessors, and also you have to do now as businesses, or encourage your clients to do if you're consultants, is process auditing. And increasingly, I'm seeing in an integrated system, integrated operational control procedures. So you would have, if we take I don't know, let's take a good example. Let's take a heat treatment oven, something that I know a bit about as a metallurgist. You might have a procedure that controls all aspects of how that heat treatment oven will work. So it will cover the quality aspects, so how you set the oven, how you set the temperature, dependent on the output of the components that you're heat treating. You might have in there how to manage it from a health and safety perspective, so the levels of PPE that are required, the way of opening and closing the doors, things to wear when you're opening and closing the doors. There might be something in there about environment and energy, about maybe how things are set, looking at maybe waste areas. So the whole idea of an integrated system is that you wouldn't have 6 or 7 procedures covering one operation. You would stitch them all together almost in this operational manual that covers all the different facets of a process. And that's what we mean by process auditing within a fully integrated system. Is there anything else on this slide, Terry? I can't see the next bit of the slide, so I can't remember whether there's anything else below that.
No, there's another bit there that just I'll go on to the next slide. Just a quick one on operational planning and control, though. The whole point of integration is about using these various controls and operational controls to deliver what's needed by the organization and making these things part of the normal routine. So it isn't about, well, we produce some widgets and then we consider the health and safety of, or we consider the environmental requirements of. It's, this is how we control and produce our product or service, and it considers those as a rounded view as opposed to a separated, siloed view. The integration of the various disciplines into the production and process system is quite important and may take a period of time. So it may be that a mature, as a system matures, the level of integration increases over time.
Indeed.
Just a quick one there.
So,
no.
I don't know how familiar you are with our website. There is a huge amount of information on our website that's available to everybody, not just to clients. We make it all available in the hope that if you see something you like and you like how we work, you might decide to come and work with us, either as a consultant, as part of our associate partner program, or indeed as a client. One of the tools that we've put up there is an Annex Sl comparison tool. Very, very worthwhile having a look at that. And as I say, it's available to anybody. You don't just have to be an NQA client to see it. It's a tool that goes through Annex Sl and pulls out what each of the main standards actually means. So as you can see there, we've got a lot of the different standards. We've got the main ones at the beginning: 9, 14, 45, 50, 27. And as you move over to the right-hand side, we get into some of the what I would call fringe standards, but we've got the main 4 or 5 core standards on the left-hand side. And as you can see, it goes through the whole of the standard. So it starts at clause 4, goes through all the auditable clauses right the way through to clause 10, and that's available as a download on our website. We've also got implementation guides as well, which will help you for each of the individual standards. It will help you with that implementation. It can give you quite a bit of focus and steering, if you like, on how to implement these standards. These implementation guides have been written. I've written 2 of them. I've written the 14,001 and the 50,001, and they're written by people that know what they're talking about. And I've seen, over my 14 years at NQA, I've seen some of the best systems in the world. I've seen some of the worst. And a lot of that experience has been built into pulling together these implementation guides.
Yeah, most definitely. There is a lot of support on our website for clients and organisations in terms of integration, and also from our associate partner programme, because we do work with our associate partners, and we do regularly have discussion forums and etc. Their feedback to us as to what they think we do well and what they think we could improve on, and vice versa. We talk to them about what's going on in the industry, because, you know, when we're doing an assessment, we go into organisations and look at the depth of various things going on within the organisation, but it doesn't always give us an overview of what's going on across various sectors and industries. So it's quite useful to have that two-way opportunity for discussion with our associated partners.
So if you're on the webinar and you're acting as a consultant and you wish to join or become part of our associate partner program, when Natalie fires out the emails next week about the sending you links to the presentation, which will be on YouTube, and also sending you a copy of the slides, if you're a consultant and you wish to join the associate partner program, just reply to Natalie and tell her that you're interested, and she will be able to facilitate those discussions.
We also do, obviously, a lot of training courses, both for internal auditor training and implementation guides and various things in terms of training courses there for integrated management systems and implementing management systems. So there's a lot of support in terms of training. We also do a range of advanced training courses. These are short half-day courses that have been introduced this year, looking at the various elements, and these elements are based on our experience in relation to being with clients and commonly asked questions in relation to. So there's a number of sort of workshop and courses that are available there.
So that's the end of the presentation bit. At the moment, there aren't any more questions. We've only had the 3 questions at the moment. This is sort of the last chance. We do have a little bit of time. If anybody has anything else they want to ask, then please start typing now. I think we set out to fill sort of between 45 minutes and an hour. We've done 48 minutes now, looking at my clock. So if there's any other questions that you want to ask, then, as I say, we'll hang about for a couple of minutes now just to see if anything. There we go. Thank you. I am a quality manager in one firm who has got 9001, and I'm aiming for 45 and 14 together, fully integrated by the end of this year. Okay, I think, is it feasible and advisable to go for both standards integration at the same time? What do you reckon, Terry? So he's already got 9001.
Yeah.
He's wanting to add in 9 and 14. Is it a bit ambitious to go for both at the same time, or would you do one and then the other?
In fairness, there's nothing to stop you doing, you know, grasping the nettle, so to speak, and introducing 2 new standards at the same time. It depends on your own organisation requirements and your confidence and your culture within your organisation, because what you've got to remember is the introduction of this isn't just about getting the, getting the introduction in and getting all the documents in place. This has actually got to deliver and give meaningful benefit to your organisation, and we need a certain amount of information to prove that historically over a short, even a relatively short period of time, 3 to 6 months, that it's been implemented and can be seen as being operationally in place. So it really does depend on your own organisation. But yes, there's nothing to stop you introducing 2 standards at the same time. But it can be challenging.
I would probably say getting the implementation in place is probably feasible within, where are we now? Halfway through June, so with 6 months left in this year. Whether you would be able to get through the entire certification program by the end of the year, which would probably mean that your first part of the certification program would have to be done in September, October, in terms of the next stage 1 to look at the additional bits that you've written. I'm not sure whether that might be quite challenging to be ready for, say, October to have a stage 1 assessment on the new bits of the system. But I think to get the system integrated and in place, and as Terry said, to start making sure that you've got some objective evidence to show that the system's not only in place but working, I think to get that in place for an October, which is the timescale you would have to be thinking of, that might be a little bit, as you say, what's the phrase? Optimistic.
Ambitious.
Ambitious, yes. Now, interestingly, there's a supplementary question on that same one. And this is an interesting one, and you're probably going to get the answer that you might suspect to this question. Is it preferable to go with the same certification body for all 3 elements of the system? Or is there any harm in going to different bodies? Now, obviously, I would say yes, and I would say that you should go with NQA. However, one of the problems that you may have, and I do see this, I don't know whether you've come across this, Terry, I have a couple of clients where they have a fully integrated system. However, 9,001 is with one certification body and 14,001 is with somebody else.
Yeah.
So what you end up with is the different certification bodies auditing the same part of the system. And now, whilst we're all auditing to the same standard and we're all auditing to the same principles, sometimes assessors can slightly have different, possibly priorities is maybe the best word to use. And there can be sometimes a little bit of conflict between requirements from the 2 certification bodies looking at the same thing. But one of the main benefits from a certification perspective about having an integrated system is it reduces the amount of time that you would need on an audit. So as an example, if you were having, say, 2 days for a 9,001 audit and 2 days for a 14,001 audit, if you fully integrate the system, the chances are that the new audit schedule would be 3 days. So this is where 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4, 2 plus 2 would equal 3, because so many elements of the system have been combined. So when we're quoting and people come along and say, right, we now want to integrate our 2 or our 3 systems, it cuts down the total amount of certification time. Now, by using 2 separate bodies, you're not going to get that degree of saving, if you like, in the audit days. Hope that answers that question. Now, so there's a couple on here that I'm not so sure that I know as much about some of these standards. Nigel has asked, we tried to combine 44,001 into our existing combined 914 and 45, and it's experiencing problems as 44,001 is so different.
44,000?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with 44, so I can't.
It's collaborative business relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be, yeah.
Now, 44,001 still does follow the Annex Sl process.
Mm.
And I suspect the areas that might be slightly different are some of these. Do you remember the bits that we said we're going to be different? So possibly some elements of Clause 6, which is planning, certainly operational control and possibly bits of the monitoring and measurement bits. So it may well be that what might be a better approach is to go for something like a partial integration. There's a similar question from Nicola about asking the same question about 27001.
Yeah.
Can it be integrated the same? Now, I would say you might want to sort of go for a partial integration on both of those standards. So they've still got the requirements for context and leadership, and there's a management review section, and there's a section about internal auditing, but it may be that you want to pull out separately some of the operational control bits, the clauses 6, the planning bits, and the clause 8. They may want to be sat almost with a dotted line between those elements and the integration. That might be the best way forward. Now here's one. Now here's why I'm going to have to be completely ignorant now. Derek's asked about ISO 22716, and I'm going to be totally show my complete ignorance there, Derek, and I haven't a clue what that standard is at the moment. Do you know, Terry?
No, like I say, I like you specialise in, for my specialism is 45001 and the subsequent guidance that comes with that.
Yes.
And then the 9 and the 14 and et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah.
Our brief in terms of some other standards, we don't have enough technical knowledge potentially to answer those or to give them their due consideration, really.
Right. 22716 is a specific standard on the production, control, storage and shipment of cosmetic products.
Yes,
I don't use many cosmetic products, Terry. I don't know about you, so that's maybe why I don't know much about it. However, looking at the date of the standard, that standard is a 2007 standard, so it certainly isn't going to be in any Annex Sl format. No. And remember, when we've been talking about integration, and I'm addressing this now. Thank you, Derek. You've what you probably haven't seen is me behind frantically Googling what 22,716 is. Thank you. I think the specific product standards, or standards that sort of look at how something is produced, remember we're talking about integrating management system standards. And I know probably 22,716 has an element of management in there, but we're now getting into product related standards as opposed to a more generic management system. So you could apply 9 and 14 and 27,000 and 50,000. All of those could be applied to a company organization making cosmetic products. You couldn't apply 22,716 to an engineering company. So we're talking about the management system standards. And I think you're probably right. I possibly wouldn't be thinking about it fully integrating. It might, as you've asked the question, Derek, you've said, can it be integrated with 9001? I would say certainly, because 9001 is very much about producing something, and it's the outputs from that process, whatever it is, whether you're manufacturing, whether you're a service industry. And I think it probably does sit better alongside 9. I'm not sure how it would fit alongside a more generic standard like 14 or 45,001. That's probably about as far as I can take it, Derek, I'm afraid. It's 2:03, or certainly is here in the UK. I notice there's a couple of people in other parts of the world, so whatever time it is there. But we've had our hour. I'll do a last sweep for any questions. I think I've answered all of the questions that anybody... Oh, here we go. So I did miss one, Ben. I don't know if he's still with us. From a lead auditor's point of view, assuming we have a fully integrated system, would you prefer to internally audit an integrated system process by process, or conduct separate audits focusing on 14 and 45, etc.? What do you reckon, Terry? If you're going into audit a fully integrated system, how would you go about doing it?
I would do the integrated process audit approach, in all fairness. And however, that's not to stop an internal the internal audit program of an organisation doing a bit of mixing and matching there, depending on what it needs to achieve by the audit, because it may be a requirement that they want to look in a particular area about a specific area of concern or whatever, or an area that's recently changed. So they could focus on a particular element in a particular process area because there was a requirement within the organisation. So how I would look at it and how the organisation would look at it can vary because the organisation's there more frequently and it would have more information to go, I'm concerned about this particular requirement, so I'm going to go in that area and look around these controls in relation to that discipline.
Okay. Final sweep through. I think I've covered the question on how the costs work out for integrated certifications. It is more cost effective because we're not auditing separate systems, and obviously we can take that into account.
Just a quick one on the cost there just to confirm. Integrating of systems with a UCAS, and I do emphasise a UCAS accredited organisation, the maximum it can reduce the external integration assessment time is reducing it by 20%.
Yeah.
So therefore, but the other thing to consider, not just the external assessment costs, is actually the bigger cost to the organisation is quite probably the internal costs and maintaining and coordinating the system. So always look at the efficiency from an internal perspective first, because I would suggest it'll be far greater than the external costs.
I think that's everything covered, Terry. I've been through the questions. I don't think we've missed anything out. I think we've sort of covered everything that everybody was looking for now. So do you want to just wrap up?
Yeah.
In the nicest possible way.
In the nicest possible way. On behalf of Richard and myself and NQA, I'd like to thank you all for attending. I hope you've found the webinar useful. If you've got any suggestions for other webinars going forward, etc., by all means, don't hesitate to contact NQA, or if you've got myself and Richard's email addresses, by all means, use those and contact us directly, and we can put your proposals forward. We hope you found it enjoyable. Whatever support you need, as a good salesman would always say, start at NQA and then work your way through from there on. So, you know.
Just a reminder, by probably Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest, you'll have an email from Natalie sending you a copy of the slides and also a link to a YouTube page where there is a recording of not only this presentation, but every other webinar that both Terry, I, and other members of NQA staff have carried out over the last 4 or 5 years. So again, from me, thank you very much. Have a good weekend, everybody, and stay safe, as they say.
Cheers, everybody. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.